Taking pictures of things silhouetted against the sky can make for some really interesting, artistic, high-key style images, but you'll often struggle to make them if you're leaving your camera to its own devices. High-key images are images that have loads of contrast between foreground and background. In this case, what we want to do is produce a frame where we've got this nice, bright, blown-out sky behind a really cool-looking dark silhouette there in the foreground. Left to its own devices, your camera is not going to do a great job of this kind of photography because it can't figure out exactly how you're trying to expose your frame. So if you can find your camera's expert mode or pro mode, you're going to have a much better time of it. And what you'll be able to do there is start to take control of some of the different aspects of how your camera manages its exposures. So if we frame up here, in pro mode, we have all of these extra variables that the camera normally takes care of all on its own, and they allow us to change things like white balance, autofocus, and that kind of thing. The one that we're interested in here is EV here on the end. EV stands for exposure value, and it basically lets us get into changing how the camera is going to expose without needing to understand ISO, shutter speed, and all that kind of stuff. The way that it works is really simple. Once we've selected it, we get this scale at the bottom, and as we drag along, our picture gets darker as we go that way. That's roughly what the camera thinks is the correct exposure, and then as we come this way, that sky is going to get brighter and brighter until the whole frame blows out, which might be an interesting effect on its own, but what we want here is a nice punchy bright sky with a silhouette kind of in the middle. So up by here, I can see that my sky is just beginning to overexpose. That's about the frame that I want. We'll hit OK on that, and we'll see what we've got. So let's see what we made. This first frame is the camera left entirely to its own devices, figuring out its own exposure. And as you can see, it's a bit indistinct. There's a bit of detail in the cloud, but also a bit of overexposure just here in the brightest spot. There's not very much detail or definition available in the foreground there. And you can also see that I've very clumsily included this little strip of horizon just down there at the bottom because I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing, and that completely robs us of the silhouette effect that we're trying to get. As we start to move the EV slider around, this is what we get when we deliberately underexpose. That hot spot in the sky there has calmed down, and we've got lots more detail and even a bit of colour in the clouds. We've lost, however, all of the silhouette effect that we were trying to get because the brightness between the sky in the background and my tree in the foreground is about the same. As we pull the EV slider violently the other way, this is what we get when we completely overexpose. The sky has completely gone out to white, but we've also lost all of our subject in the foreground there as well. The effect that we're trying to get is this one, all done in camera, but with just a slight overexposure. We've lost nearly all of the detail in the sky there, and we've got a really strong looking silhouette that kind of invites us to explore all of its detail, all of these little sharp pointy ends of the branches, and it's a frame that the camera wouldn't have taken left to its own devices.